So if you're someone who's interested in the global economy, if you have stocks in the markets, in any market around the world, you will have, of course, seen the big news coming in that Donald Trump has suspended tariffs on reciprocal tariffs on a number of countries around the world for around 90 days. However, he's kept tariffs, a basic 10% tariff on the world. And also, the one country that he has refused to remove tariffs on is China. In fact, he's bumped tariffs up to 125%, an absolutely staggering number that you would not have thought of. Really, the worst case scenario for US China economic relations. But the Chinese have responded by raising tariffs on American goods to 84%, or mirroring in some senses Donald Trump's desire for, if he, they're saying that if you want to go toe to toe with us, then we will absolutely match you, we will match your tone, and we will match your level of extremism on this issue of trade and tariffs. So, of course, the United States and China now heading for a bruising trade war that is set to play out over the next couple of weeks and months, if not years. But at this point in time, the sense that we have is from President Donald Trump, just to begin with, is that he said that he does not think that he will need to raise tariffs any further on China. He's again said that he thinks that President Xi Jinping of China is a smart man and that there will be a deal between the United States and China. That was the rhetoric coming out of the White House this morning and from President Donald Trump himself. But absolutely a decision that highlights some of the uncertainty that has really afflicted the global markets over the last couple of weeks after Donald Trump has announced his reciprocal tariffs. The important thing to remember here is two things. We'll get into the main meat of what this this quick chat that we wanted to have with you about the US-China tariffs. We'll get to the US-China tariffs, that question as well. But just before we get into that, I wanted to also discuss that, just to say that there's been a lot of positive reaction both in American markets and in markets around the world regarding the trading of US stocks and also of stocks all over the world. There's been a positive reaction because of Donald Trump's decision to suspend these tariffs, pause these tariffs for 90 days. However, a basic 10% tariff on goods coming in from all over the world will still be levied, and a suspended tariff does not mean that the tariff has disappeared, right? It could just come back in a different form, and that's an important thing to remember because, as people have said, it does not change the fundamental fact that businesses which rely on foreign investments basically have a 90-day stay of execution. It's just 3 months. 3 months is not long enough for you to decide to make certain business plans that are sometimes multi-year in their implications. So in fact, this is a stay of execution, but at the same time, what is really going to still impact the US economy is the fact that there still remains uncertainty about whether Donald Trump will, in 90 days time, agree to follow through on these tariffs, which will continue to be just as destructive. So there's positive sentiment right now, but whether that will last is something that remains to be seen. Of course, for example, Goldman Sachs, the well-known financial investment institution, has made very clear that it is not altering its recession forecast. It's saying there's a 45% chance of a recession in the United States, and the recent announcement from Donald Trump does nothing to change that. So that highlights some of the problems here, that even if you suspend these tariffs for 90 days, it still means that there is still uncertainty for businesses. That doesn't mean they're not going to invest, consumer confidence is not going to improve, and you might be moving towards a recession. So a good first step, but again, doesn't target the fundamental problem that markets have had with the Trump administration since it took office in January this year. But now let's talk about the US-China equation. 125% tariff by the Americans on China, 84% tariff on the Chinese on America by the Chinese government. Now this is getting to a situation where China has said that it will fight to the end, that it will not be bullied by the United States. You're hearing a lot of justifications coming out right now about why this is happening, why exactly this sort of policy is being adopted. And the view at this point in time seems to be very much from China's perspective that it believes that if it is bullied by the United States, it will not get a good deal. It does not believe at this point in time that giving in to Trump's demands, giving in to Trump's threats or bullying will be good for it politically. At home, they don't want to look weak. China, remember, sees itself as a superpower as well and equal to the United States, especially on the economic front, and they cannot be seen to be buckling down to American pressure. That's an important incentive because of which China is pushing back hard against America. It refuses to be bullied. But some of the analysis that you're hearing out of China shows that actually China does in fact understand that the impact of this tariff could be ruinous for them, because although America and China have a $600 billion trading relationship now, around 400 billion of that is China selling goods to America. Around 150, 160 billion is America selling goods to China, right? So of course China does sell more to the United States, so which is why number one, its exports to America could be very badly hit because of these American tariffs. In fact, there are a number of very good articles talking about Chinese factory owners, small Chinese factory owners who have small profit margins, who will find that they could be absolutely eviscerated, destroyed by the fact that these tariffs have been put into place. They could be very terrible for China's export-oriented economy, especially small factories. But also on the import side, China still gets crucial machinery from America. It gets aircrafts from America. It gets agricultural goods, including soybeans, from America, right? And tariffs on all of those things could substantially hit the Chinese economy as well, raise prices for an economy that has only just started to do slightly better on some indicators. Remember, China is also not doing very well economically. It's having deflation, it has youth unemployment, its economy has not recovered to the extent that it should have after the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is another major shock to the Chinese economy externally, which relies so much on trade to get its economic growth engines moving. So that is a major concern from the Chinese side. From the American side as well, there are serious concerns. If you buy $400 billion worth of goods from a particular country, you are playing with fire when you put a 125% tariff on them. There are tariffs now on e-commerce goods that Americans rely on for cheap e-commerce goods, fashion, so on and so forth. That is going to hit the wallet of the American consumer. There are also other imports, textiles, so on and so forth, that will come in from China. China has also restricted rare earth exports to the United States, again something that could hit advanced manufacturing capabilities for the United States government. And so that is another thing that could create problems for the US economy. And remember, as I said before, that 10% tariff still goes into place on all countries all over the world. So again, you are raising the price of imports coming into the United States, many of which will be passed on to the American consumer. This is a good first step by the Trump administration after a week of chaos, but it doesn't absolve them of the responsibility for launching this trade war and then pulling it back with seemingly nothing to show for it. So that is the situation that we're in at this point in time. But as I said, the Chinese are making very clear at this point in time that they're not going to back down. But the important thing to also remember here is there's an interesting argument that is being made by some people who track China, track how they look at these issues, who are actually saying that the big thing for China is that China actually thinks it could win a trade war with the United States. Remember that China does not have to wait for too long. It just has to outlast Donald Trump. A lot of people in China will look at this and say that, look, he could not even keep these reciprocal tariffs live for 13 hours. How is he going to withstand? How is Donald Trump going to withstand the political unpopularity that comes with placing so many tariffs on Chinese goods and raising the cost of imports into the United States? He does not have the political capital to do that. Consumers will be angry. They will be up in arms. Donald Trump will have to give way to us. He will be wiped out of the midterm elections in the United States. The Congressional Republican Party, on which Donald Trump also relies, will also rebel. They will also say that, look, we need cheap goods coming into the United States. All of that means that from the Chinese calculation, they can continue to bear the pain of this economic war, even though they know it will be destructive, because they know that it will hurt Donald Trump more, and Donald Trump is the one who is going to have to climb down. Secondly, China is also less worried about coming to a deal with the United States, because fundamentally the sense seems to be that we now accept that America has decided to make it a top foreign policy goal to restrict our rise. And on the other hand, the Americans are also convinced that the Chinese want to replace America as the top prime global power, and therefore there's a fundamental conflict of interest between these two countries. Their interests are colliding, therefore they must compete, and therefore the view is that, look, it seems that a competitive approach is what America wants. A competitive approach is what America will get. Now again, China does not necessarily seem like it wishes to take this trade war to the next level. It does not, but it still has several cards that it holds at this point in time. For example, Trump wants Chinese support in ending the Ukraine war. It wants Chinese support in stemming the flow of fentanyl, which is an important part of, let's say, the opioid crisis that has killed thousands of Americans over the last couple of years. There is also a large amount of concern, as I was saying, about political trouble that may come for Donald Trump if tariffs on Chinese goods raise prices for American consumers. Remember that it was the inflation that wrecked Joe Biden's chances in the 2024 election and the Democratic chances in the 2024 election. In fact, inflation was what got Donald Trump into the White House. And if he triggers another round of inflation, perhaps even a recession, then his party's chances are going to be very, very difficult. So at this point in time, China, which has been making efforts to revive its economy at home, has been looking to deepen trade relations with other countries, fix its relationship with India, fix its relationship with the European Union. All of that means at this point in time that, in fact, China believes that we can outlast Donald Trump. We still have cards to play. We can continue to put pressure on the U.S. economy, and Donald Trump will not simply able to be politically will not have the political capability to take the kind of pressure that we are going to put on him. Therefore, the view is that actually there will be, in a very, very real sense, a Chinese victory in this trade war that is going on. And that's why China is also not backing down, despite the fact that it also feels that there are serious damages that could be done to the Chinese economy. America, on the other hand, has made clear that that it sees China as a major offender, which is why it has not removed tariffs on China. It wants to bring China to a deal because, of course, China is, from their perspective, the biggest offender when it comes to trade relations, when it comes to the trade deficit, which is something that obsesses US, which President Trump is absolutely obsessed with. The idea of American trade deficit, of American manufacturing being hollowed out by China. So his eyes and his sights are firmly fixed on China. Now, there was a lot of talk at one point in time when Prime Minister Modi went to America. America said that, look, we don't want to be tough on China. We want to have a deal with China. That was the view. Now, of course, it seems like the tone on the relationship has turned significantly negative. This is also what happened in the first Trump term, where for a short while there, he tried to get a deal out of the Chinese. It didn't work. And then the relationship became significantly more competitive. So again, you are back here where just 2 months ago, we were worrying and fretting about, oh my God, could there be a possible US-China deal that cuts India out? No one is having that conversation anymore. It seems at this point in time that there is a competitive dynamic that is set into the US-China relationship. It means the two countries will remain competitors, and neither side is backing down at this point in time, and neither side can be seen to be backing down. It'll be bad for Donald Trump, it'll be bad for Xi Jinping to be seen to back down. So that is a situation that we are locked in at this point in time. Of course, it could change. Donald Trump has made clear that he wants a deal. China may also see its interest in having a deal, and then we could be having another conversation here about Donald Trump and his deal making with China, how that impacts countries like India, whether that leaves countries like India out in the cold. But again, here we are with America and China both thinking that they can win a trade war with each other, and that is a situation where truly catastrophic consequences could occur. But thank you so much for joining us here on this quick live, this quick chat that we wanted to have with you on the US-China trade relationship, as well as the tariffs that both countries have imposed on each other.